Hi, my name is Heidi, and I run a nonprofit organization called Refuge for the Refugees. I have been a human rights activist for the past 10 to 11 years now, and a lot of my work involves policy advocacy, doing case management for refugee communities, going into detention centers, looking into human trafficking rings. In a gist, Refuge Refugees is a nonprofit organization that really cares about championing the rights of refugees and migrants in Malaysia. At the moment, we run about 35 schools, two halfway homes, and a social business school, looking to ensure that all children in Malaysia have the right to basic human rights, like access to education. During the pandemic was a really interesting time for us. We had to scale away from education to meeting the basic needs of refugees and migrants in the country. When the pandemic hit in March for Malaysia, 2020, if I'm not mistaken, Malaysia went into complete lockdown. And with the social movement control, it also gave the government an opportunity to go out, and try to arrest and detain as many refugees and migrants as possible. To give a context, Malaysia is it's not a destination country, but it's a stopover country for refugees who are fleeing from war and persecution. Malaysia's home to about 160,000 refugees. 160,000 refugees. And this is just the official numbers. We've got so many more refugees that are not registered in the country yet. But yet we are not the signatory of the Refugee Convention protocol. So when refugees come to Malaysia, they can't be formally recognized as a citizen. It's often a layover before they get resettled, if they get resettled at all. And Malaysia, in the gist, is pretty xenophobic country. With certain governments leading us, it can be a pretty xenophobic country. And so during the pandemic and during the lockdown, our immigration officers actually went out on a witch hunt for refugees and migrants in an attempt to cleanse the country of people that are not Malaysians. And because of that, they would be rounding up hundreds of refugees every other day, chaining them together like animals, spraying them down with Dettol because of COVID, and chucking them into detention centers. This was happening in an extremely tight lockdown period when people were told to stay home and to keep safe and to social distance. But yet, out of desperation, refugees were our immigration was going out to arrest and detain refugees. And so when that happened, that caused our detention centers to be COVID hotspots. Numbers are going up in detention centers. COVID numbers of detainees, and if you understand how detention centers in Malaysia works, you often have about 100 detainees crammed into a tiny, teeny cell, and that's why COVID numbers were really spiking. But because COVID numbers were spiking in our detention centers, that caused the COVID numbers across the country to rise as well. Because of that, our Director General of Health actually released a statement saying that, now is not a good time to arrest refugees and migrants. It's not only actually inhumane to do so, but it really is a national health concern when we do that, for the entire country. And when that happened, as an activist and just playing my role, I actually reposted on Facebook what he had shared, and added my sentiments along with it, sharing the story of a detainee that I had worked with in 2018 who was a victim of human trafficking. I shared her lived experience that was actually already recorded in our National Human Rights Report of Malaysia. And part of her story, really included sharing about the unsanitary conditions of detention centers in Malaysia, how how babies don't get access to diapers, women don't get access to sanitary pads. I mean, you get all sorts of, skin conditions, all sorts of ailments in detention centers because of the extremely unsanitary conditions. But not just that, it's not just unsanitary. Often, immigration officers can also be extremely abusive. I posted that just as food for thought, for the public to think about, not really planning for it to go viral, but upon waking up the next morning, it went extremely viral, and that caused that caused a lot of eyes on our immigration officers, you know. Malaysians, whether or not they were supportive of refugees or not, got extremely angry about the conditions of detention centers. They started holding our leaders accountable to what was happening in there. And because of that, you know, as a backlash, I actually got in, the police came to my house in three police cars to pick me up, and I got arrested and charged um, for using the internet with intention to offend and annoy. That happens in Malaysia. You know, the government often uses that against activists who are speaking up, try to clamp down voices that are speaking about topics that are important. um so when that happened, I think that was an extremely traumatizing period for me. I remember, you know, having to go to the police station, having to have my statement taken, being charged at court, going to go through many court dates. And it was a trying season, but I think what really encouraged me from all of that was just um how much seeing how God can use our voices to speak up on topics that are important, to shine light where it is dark. And because of that, you know, ever since my post went viral on detention centers in Malaysia, we got not just national attention on detention centers in Malaysia, but also regional accountability. Human Rights Watch um, councils, you know, from across the globe started writing into Malaysia saying that, like, hey, you can't treat activists this way whenever they speak up on issues that are important. But at the same time, this is not right. You know, your detention centers need to run better. You know, while it's still been an ongoing battle, I mean, I was charged in 2021 eventually, and in 2022 charges were dropped. But now that we're going into 2023, I was told that I was being charged again for the very same issue because, um, you know, our leadership is not happy about how much attention that detention centers are getting. But I guess through this, I just really want to encourage people to keep speaking up about topics that are important, keep shining light where it's dark, because as long as you keep speaking the truth, God will have your back. And I see that so evidently through the counsel of support I've received, through the lawyers that have been on my side, through how seeing many international and global bodies come together to ensure that, you know, I continue being protected even as I continue speaking up on issues that are important.